Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Julie Perry, and I am directing Kyle Kuzak and crossing Taylor Perkins, as well as taking care of all the housekeeping measures. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Link. Today I will be directing Detective Jordan Markowitz, crossing Blake Van Owen, and providing the prosecution's closing statement.
Good afternoon. My name is Lillian Swenson. I will be conducting the opening statement, directing Alex, and crossing Avery Becker.
Permission for the witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Lucille Walker, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
My name is Natalie Burnham, and I am Jordan Markowitz.
My name is Charlotte Swenson, and I am Alex Cifuentes.
Thank you. Just a moment. All right, and for the defense?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Brakeen Mahoney, and I will be doing the defense opening statement, the direct of Professor Van Owen, and the cross of Alex Cifuentes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Emily Simon. I will be directing Taylor Perkins and cross-examining Kyle Kuzak.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sadie Fitzpatrick. I will be directing Avery Becker and crossing Detective Markowitz and providing the defense's closing statement.
Thank you. And your witnesses?
Good evening, Your Honor, everyone. I am Kendall Adams, and I am Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sevilla Montoya, and I am Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Bradley Calkins, and I am Avery Becker.
Thank you. Hang on for just a moment, everyone, please. The court calls the people versus Avery Becker. Are the people ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your
And is
Honor.
the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. I don't think we have anyone in the gallery that I need to worry about. They're watching remotely.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Scoring panelists, do any of you have any reason to believe that you would have a conflict in scoring these two teams?
No, Your Honor.
Not, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, if any member of the team discovers at some point that they think there is some conflict, then simply remind the teams that their coaches should report any dispute regarding that or anything arising out of this competition in accordance with competition rules. And are both teams scorekeepers ready to proceed as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, let me swear in our team members. If you will each Raise your right hand. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
I do.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. And now our witnesses. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If you do, please say I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Now for our scoring panelists. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. We will begin. Are there any preliminary matters that I need to address first for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. We have 3 housekeeping matters at this time. First, we have entered into certain stipulations, and we request that they be constructively read into the record, and we request to publish them through screen sharing.
You may.
Secondly, prosecution also requests that all time not used for closing be reserved for a rebuttal.
That's granted.
And lastly, would you prefer the counsel to admit exhibits before screen sharing, or would you rather us screen share exhibits while laying the foundation for admission?
For the purposes of this proceeding, you may display the exhibits while you are laying foundation. That's not how we would normally do it, but we'll go ahead and do that for this proceeding.
Thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
Thank you. Anything preliminarily for the defense?
No, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed to trial.
Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin. The people may make their opening statement. I'm sorry, let me pause you for just a moment, counsel, and timekeeper stop. I just want to make sure with our courtroom monitor, if we still have her, that we're ready to proceed. You don't have any conflicts from another courtroom that we need to hold on for. All right, it doesn't sound like it. My apologies. We'll go ahead with the people's opening statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Lillian Swenson, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent the state of Colorado. The prosecution today holds the burden of proof, and evidence will show that beyond a reasonable doubt, the defendant is guilty of burglary in the 2nd degree and murder in the 1st degree. Alex Becker had a tense relationship with Mr. Brackman that resulted in Avery getting kicked off the mock trial team, vandalizing Mr. Brackman's Porsche, and many verbal confrontations. Avery Becker and Mr. Brackman did not have an amicable relationship. Text evidence collected by Detective Markowitz, an expert witness in today's trial, illustrates Avery's intent to burglarize Mr. Brackman's home. The evidence also shows that on March 6, 2020, Avery Becker, an impulsive and hot-tempered teenager, attempted to trash Mr. Brackman's home. A struggle ensued, one that ended in the fatal stabbing of Mr. Brackman. This is felony murder, and a classic example of impulsivity in response to confrontation. The defendant, Avery Becker, is an impulsive teenager who was caught in the midst of a crime. Avery did have a friend on the mock trial team, Taylor Perkins. The loyal history of Taylor Perkins includes joining a mock trial with the sole purpose of hanging out with Avery, driving Avery to school, and she is also the only witness that can testify to Avery's alibi for the trial today. In a crowded mall, only Taylor can place Avery Becker's location on March 6th. On the day of the murder, Avery will also say that she was looking for her phone all day with Taylor. but having her phone could be being compared to her third kidney, it is unreasonable to think that she took all night to realize it was missing. The prosecution's analysis of the evidence was not flawed. Detective Markowitz began with the idea that an angry ex-client of Mr. Brackman's could be the culprit, but the evidence supported a different conclusion. Text from Avery Becker to Alex Fuentes demonstrates an intent of burglary, and phone analysis done by Detective Markowitz places Avery near Mr. Brackman's house on the day of the crime. Kyle Kuzak, an expert witness with 19 years of experience, also reconstructed the crime scene. The evidence shows that there is a confrontation, and the process, a 5-step process designed with the trial in mind, is confirmation that there was a conflict. Her work was thorough and unbiased. The defense's private investigator, Professor Van Owen, has multiple biases against the trial today. She has a troubled past with the police department that resulted in her leaving the police. Since then, she has only worked to fight the police's investigation. Today's trial is another attempt in her battle and her grudge against the police department. Secondly, Professor Van Owen is being paid $8,000 to be in trial today. It is her job, she will say, but if it is solely for the purpose of her job, why is it a boasting point in her witness statement made before court? The evidence is clear. Avery Becker was confronted in the middle of an attempted burglary, during which Mr. Brackman was fatally stabbed. This is felony murder. Avery Becker's alibi is only supported by Taylor Perkins, who has a motive to lie to protect her friend. The investigation conducted by Professor Van Owen has no original evidence and is influenced by monetary and personal bias. The evidence is clear. Avery Becker was at the scene of the crime with the intent to burglarize, and Mr. Brackman was fatally killed. We ask that you find the defendant guilty of burglary in the second degree and murder in the first degree.
Thank you, Ms. Swenson. Opening statement for the defense.
You're 18 years old. You're a senior in high school, and you're looking forward to your entire future ahead of you. Your mock trial coach is tragically murdered, and you're being accused of the crime. And suddenly, all of your hopes and dreams for the future are threatened of being taken from you. This is the story of Avery Becker. Avery Becker is being accused of the crime of her high school mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. You will see evidence that will show that my client has been wrongfully accused and that the prosecution cut corners in their rush to build a case, did not make reasonable efforts to consider all possible suspects, and rushed the process in concluding that Avery was guilty. In order for the prosecution to prove their case, they are going to have to convince you that this murder was a spontaneous act, not premeditated. Because if you find that this murder was premeditated, even the prosecution would concede that my client is innocent. The prosecution says that Brackman's murder was a heat-of-the-moment act, resulting in death. But in reality, the evidence will show that this was a premeditated, pre-planned murder. And here's why. For one, there was not much blood found at the crime scene. And if there really was a struggle, you would expect to see blood everywhere, resulting from Brackman and the intruder wrestling for control over the knife. Therefore, the prosecution claims that Brackman and the intruder were both standing, as the assailant somehow managed to reach around and stab Brackman from behind. But for an intruder to stab Brackman in a downward angle and still nick Brackman's aorta if they were both standing, the intruder would have to have been a much bigger person than Brackman. The ring security camera videos, however, make it clear that the intruder was not that big. And so it makes far more sense for Brackman to have been sitting with the intruder standing behind him. Also, the knife used to kill Brackman was a different brand and style from the rest of the knives found in Brackman's kitchen, indicating that the intruder came in with the knife and the intent to kill. Now with regard to Avery's cell phone. There will be witnesses that will explain that Avery lost her phone the day before the murder and was not in possession of it at all the following day. Not only will Avery testify to this, but so will Taylor Perkins, a fellow high school student who was with Avery the entire day of the murder, providing her with a solid alibi. The prosecution is going to show you screenshots of text messages as well that Alex Cifuentes, another high school student, allegedly received from Avery the day of the murder. However, again, in their rush to build a case, the prosecution cut another corner and never obtained the actual phone. They accepted screenshots from a high school student that could easily be doctored. Another reason to doubt the authenticity of these screenshotted texts is that Alex Cifuentes' credibility is in question. Alex has always been jealous of Avery's mock trial talent and wanted her off the team, no matter what it took. Yet another instance of the prosecution's rush to build a case is the fact that the police failed to investigate all possible suspects, including a far more likely suspect, Blair Rollins. We are aware that Avery and Mr. Brackman had several ups and downs in their relationship, but I think we can all agree that a disagreement with your mock trial coach is hardly motive for murder. Blair Rollins, however, had a much stronger motive. Rollins' father was sentenced to life in prison in the wake of Brackman's deficient representation of him in court. In addition, Blair is of similar build to Avery and could have easily been the intruder seen on the ring footage. The fact that the police settled on Avery as the most likely suspect without even pursuing other possibilities, including Blair, speaks to the rushed nature of their entire investigation. Now, during the course of this trial, always bear in mind the burden of proof. The prosecution must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And as I've just explained to you, there are several gaps and shortcomings in the prosecution's case, any one of which creates reasonable doubt. I want to thank you in advance for serving on this jury and for taking your oath as a juror to be fair to my client seriously. At the close of the evidence, I'm going to ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. Please remember what a guilty verdict means to my client, an 18-year-old high school student, and the ramifications that would have on her life. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. The people may call their first witness.
We would like to call Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Witness, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you. You may.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
What is your job and what is the position?
I am a Colorado Bureau of Investigation certified crime scene reconstruction investigator, also known as a CSR.
And what does your position require you to do?
I investigate complex crime scenes such as home invasions, burglaries, homicides, domestic violence, fatal accidents, armed robberies, and other property crimes.
How many years of experience do you have?
I have 19 years of experience.
Your Honor, we move to enter a witness as an expert of crime scene reconstruction pursuant to Rule 702.
Is there any objection from the defense?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Kuzak will be admitted as an expert in those fields. Thank you. You may proceed.
Ms. Cusack, what two principles do you use to guide your work?
First, I assume every case is going to trial, so I always conduct a thorough and comprehensive investigation. Second, I memorize, document, and organize all evidence with a mindset of future reconstruction.
What are the 5 parts you apply to your principles to help with your casework?
Recognition and documentation, collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing, and reconstruction.
You investigated the crime scene yourself, correct?
Yes, I did.
What conclusions did you find?
Based on the evidence, I was able to conclude that during the afternoon of March 6th, 2020, a perpetrator matching the height and build of the defendant approached the victim's residence, initially stepping on the front porch and checking the front door as captured by a Ring door camera.
Are you familiar with what the Ring camera system is?
Yes, I am.
Can you please explain it to the court?
The Ring cameras are a security system for citizens to set up around their house. They are cameras which allow residents to see what is happening right outside their home.
And what else did the Ring camera show?
The Ring camera also showed the perpetrator then proceeding to the south side of the residence and out of the camera's range. An additional security camera on that side of the house picked up the perpetrator opening a fence gate and proceeding into the backyard.
Were any fingerprints or DNA left at the crime scene?
No fingerprints or DNA were recovered from the gate or the back door. Contrary to popular belief, DNA and fingerprints are not left on every surface, and in this case, it is clear based on the Ring cameras the perpetrator was wearing gloves anyway.
How did the perpetrator get into the home?
As seen on a security camera at the rear door of the victim's residence, the perpetrator opened the sliding glass door and entered the residence.
What happened once the perpetrator was inside the house?
Well, the victim must have been alerted by the Ring security system as the intruder approached the front door, then went around to the gate on the backside of the residence and then went to the back door. The victim likely looked for a defensive weapon in the knife drawer, but then took the larger chef's knife from the knife block.
Do you have a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibits 7 and 8?
Yes, I do.
I direct your attention to those exhibits. Would you identify them, please?
Yes, of course. Exhibit 7 is a photo of the open knife drawer found at the scene. Exhibit 8 is a photo of the knife block with the knife missing.
Your Honor, we move to enter Exhibits 7 and 8 into evidence.
Any objection to Exhibit 7 and 8?
No, Your Honor, no objections.
Exhibit 7 and 8 are admitted.
Your Honor, may our timekeeper have permission to publish this exhibit to the jury?
Yes.
I apologize. Which evidence is this?
This is Exhibit 7, and then we'll also do Exhibit 8 in just one moment. Ms. Cusack, what do Exhibit 7 show?
Exhibit 7 shows the knife drawer that was left open.
And what does Exhibit 8 show?
Exhibit 8 shows the knife block with one knife missing from the top.
How do you know this?
Well, it's my job as a crime scene reconstruction investigator to be familiar with all of the evidence of the case.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
Yes, it is.
Has it been altered in any way?
No, it has not.
Why is Exhibit 7 important to the case?
Exhibit 7 shows the drawer that was left open, which showed several small knives and kitchen utensils. I believe the victim opened this drawer after hearing the alert from the Ring door camera. The victim then searched for a defense weapon.
And why is Exhibit 8 important?
Exhibit 8 is important because it shows the empty slot in the knife block, which was for a large chef's knife, and the knife ultimately recovered from the body of the victim was just such a knife.
Timekeeper, if you would like, you can stop screen sharing. Ms. Cusack, what happened once the intruder had entered into Mr. Brackman's house?
The victim then confronted the intruder when the intruder entered through the back door. The two individuals struggled over the knife. The struggle then moved to the kitchen table where a plate was knocked to the ground.
What happened after that?
At some point, the intruder disarmed the victim and obtained the chef's knife. The location and position of the knife that was in the victim's body would be consistent with the intruder being in close proximity to the victim, such as being in a bear hug, then reaching over and stabbing the victim in the upper back or shoulder area.
What happened after the victim was stabbed?
After the victim was stabbed, the victim forcefully pulled the knife out of his back. According to the coroner's report, the tip of the knife would have acted as a partial plug to the incision in the aorta. Because of that, once the knife was removed, the victim would have started bleeding internally and died at a very accelerated rate.
Are you aware of who Blake Van Owen is?
Yes, I am.
Did you read over Van Owen's report?
Yes, I did.
Was Blake Van Owen's report accurate to your knowledge?
Not really. First, Blake Van Owen believes the victim was stabbed by the intruder from behind while at the kitchen table. This theory is not backed by evidence. The ring up would have alerted the victim of an intruder. The victim would have heard the back door slide open, and the intruder would have been holding the knife backward from the way everyone would have to hold it, and would have had to be standing directly over the victim. It doesn't add up.
Was Van Owen ever able to directly examine the evidence?
No, Blake Van Owen was never able to directly examine the evidence. His theory that the intruder sneaked up behind the victim and stabbed him in the back is laughable.
Based on your findings, do you believe that Avery Becker is responsible for the death of Brackman?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Hello, Ms. Cusack. You are a crime scene reconstructionist, right?
Yes.
And you pride yourself on the thoroughness of your investigation skills?
That's correct.
And you believe the defendant's guilt is based entirely on the select evidence you received, correct?
Yes.
So, may I refer you to Exhibit 9?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to screen share? Oh, mine's not sharing properly. Hold on. It's not sharing properly. I don't, okay. Just. Okay, so Ms. Cusack, this image is a broken plate, correct?
Yeah.
And you believe based on this image that this is indicative of a struggle, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware that plates can break for any multitude of reasons? Can they not?
Yes, but I don't understand why, if the plate hadn't broken during the intrusion, why the victim would have left a broken plate on his floor.
So you're telling me you believe the only reason a plate could be on the ground is because it had to be from a struggle, correct?
Well, not necessarily the only reason, but in this specific instance, yes, one of the only reasons would have been because of a struggle between the victim and the perpetrator.
Within Exhibit 9, are there any other indications of a struggle besides a singular broken plate on the ground?
Yes, there were scuff marks by the door.
I'm referring to an Exhibit 9. Is in Exhibit 9, are there any references that are indicative of a struggle besides the singular broken plate?
Well, I think the singular broken plate is enough to show that there was a struggle.
So you believe based entirely that there was a struggle on a single broken plate. Is that correct?
Well, you said in reference to Exhibit 9, but overall there was more evidence of a struggle.
Right. Now, going to Exhibit 18, let me share my screen. You believe these scuff marks are indicative of a struggle as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it only Exhibits 18 and 9 that are indicative of a struggle, the broken plate and the scuff marks?
Well, within the evidence of this case, it would be weird if there were scuff marks and a broken plate at the same time. It wouldn't just be a coincidence.
Now, Mr. Cusack, Ms. Cusack, are you aware that scuff marks can be made at any point in time?
Yes, but based on the plate and other findings, I'm pretty certain that these scuff marks were made because of a struggle.
Ms. Cusack, and what other findings are you referring to besides plate scuff marks?
The way the victim was stabbed shows a struggle between the perpetrator and the victim.
All right, well, moving back to Exhibit 18. Is there any way to date these particular scuff marks?
Not these particular scuff marks.
So these scuff marks can be made at any point in time, correct?
Correct, but again, I think it would be weird to leave scuff marks on the floor like that.
So then isn't it true that scuff marks could have absolutely nothing to do with Brackman's murder and rather just part of housekeeping?
Yes, again, that's true, but again, it would be really weird to just leave a mess on your floor like that.
Well, all right. Moving to the blood supposedly on the scene. There was blood supposedly on the scene, indicative of Brackman moving the knife from his back, correct?
That's correct.
Yet, do you have these photos to show the court?
No, I do not. They were lost after I reviewed them.
So the only people who saw these supposed images was you and the detective that took them on the scene, correct?
That's correct.
And do you have any proof now that they ever existed besides your own memory?
Well, again, those detectives that aren't here today would also be able to reference that those pictures did at one point exist.
Okay, Ms. Cusack, I'm asking you today, is there any actual objective proof you can bring to the court's attention that would show these images ever existed?
Well, as an expert witness, I believe it would be wrong to lie on the stand and say that these images did not say that these images did exist if they didn't.
So you do not have any proof that these images ever existed, is that correct?
That is correct, but again, I would like to push forward that I am on stand and I would not lie about something like that in a court of law.
All right, no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Witness is excused and the people may call their next witness.
The prosecution would like to call Detective Markowitz to the stand.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
Why don't you start by providing us with a little information about yourself? What is your current profession?
I am currently a homicide investigator with the Denver Police Department, and I have been for the past 7 years, but I've actually been working with the Denver Police Department for over 13 years.
And do you have any areas of specialization?
I do. I actually have advanced training and experience with cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Could you describe your training for the jury?
Of course. I have training with cell phone data and records, how to obtain and interpret this data, and then also how to use the Celebrite system, which allows me to download the contents off of any cell phone.
And how often would you say you use this training?
I use it every day. I mean, I've used it with hundreds of cell phones in over 50 cases similar to this one.
Where was your training completed?
I took a course with the American Academy of Law Enforcement where I learned about all these things.
Based on Detective Markowitz's education at the American Academy of Law Enforcement and her extensive professional experience as a homicide detective, we move to enter Detective Markowitz as an expert witness in the fields of homicide investigation and cell phone tracking, pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Detective Markowitz is accepted as an expert in those fields.
To start, Detective Markowitz, please describe your involvement in this case.
Well, I was asked to investigate the death of Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, whose body was found at his residence at 444 South Flower Street, Denver, Colorado, on March 6th, 2020.
Could you describe what you found upon arriving at the victim's residence?
Yeah, so when I first got to the scene, I noticed that the front door was wide open and the victim was lying face down in a pool of his own blood. There was a visible stab wound on Mr. Brackman's back, as well as a large blood-covered knife on the floor nearby the victim's body.
Could you please describe the knife for us?
Yes, it was a Chicago Cutlery brand blade, about 7 inches long, and this is a common kitchen knife that was easily accessible at the scene of the crime.
And why do you say that it was easily accessible?
Well, during my investigation of the house, I noticed that there was a knife block with an empty slot, as well as a drawer filled with assorted knives that was open in the kitchen.
And did any of these other knives match the Chicago Cutlery brand?
They didn't, but the victim was in possession of a multitude of different brands, as we saw from Exhibit 7, and it doesn't surprise me that the Chicago Cutlery brand could have been among them.
How did you identify the victim?
Well, during my routine investigation, I looked for any ID and realized that this was Mackenzie Brackman, who was a criminal defense lawyer.
Was there anything else you observed at the Brackman residence?
Yes, I noticed that there was a broken plate on the floor of the dining room, as well as blood spatter and cast off on the floor and walls nearby the victim. It looked to me like a random burglary gone wrong.
After identifying the victim, what steps did you take to further your investigation?
I began by downloading the contents of Mr. Brackman's cell phone using my training with the Celebrite system.
And did you find anything of use on the victim's phone?
I did. I found numerous emails, text messages, and other communication and documents regarding mock trial. After looking into this a little bit, I found out that Mr. Brackman had been a coach for the Colorado High School mock trial team.
And did you contact anyone from that mock trial team?
Yes, I was actually able to get in contact with a girl named Alex Cifuentes. And she showed me that she had some information about this case that would help me. So I had her and her parents come in for a full interview.
And did your interview of Cifuentes reveal anything about the case?
Actually, it gave me my first big break. She told me about a fellow mock trial student named Avery Becker, who shortly before Mr. Brackman's death had vandalized Mr. Brackman's car. This had resulted in Avery getting kicked off the mock trial team, and Alex proceeded to tell me about a text communication between her and Avery that had ended in Avery Becker threatening to trash Mr. Brackman's house.
Were you able to speak to Avery Becker about this case?
Unfortunately, no, her attorney blocked me from doing so.
Did you see the text communication between Cifuentes and Becker?
Well, Alex had forgotten to bring her phone to the interview, but I did have her send me screenshots to corroborate what she had told me, and they lined up perfectly. I also tried to get in to acquire Avery Becker's phone, but her attorney had informed me that it had been lost on March 5th, 2020.
Were you given access to any part of Becker's phone?
I was able to get the defendant's cell phone number. This allowed me to access account records and call detail records from March 6th, 2020.
Could you please explain to us how call detail records work?
Yeah, so unlike a service provider, call detail records keep track of every single communication that occurs between a cell phone and all the cell towers in an area. And so these cell phones are constantly reaching out to the cell towers. So if you can get the data from all the cell towers in an area at one time, you can get a pretty accurate location of a person.
How did this manage to further your investigation?
Well, I gathered all the evidence from the cell towers nearby Avery Becker's and Avery Becker's and Mr. Brackman's house about the time of the murder, and I was able to get a location on Avery Becker.
Where did Avery appear to be on the day of Brackman's death?
She appeared to have gone from her own house from about 12:47 in the afternoon, and then proceeded to travel to nearby Mr. Brackman's house from about 1:05, where she was from about 1:05 to 1:17 in the afternoon.
After reviewing all the evidence, what conclusion did you reach about the manner of Mr. Brackman's murder?
Well, from all this evidence that I've gathered, it looks like to me like a random burglary gone wrong. So Avery Becker, presumably to get revenge for getting kicked off the mock trial team, broke into Mr. Brackman's house, attempted to vandalize it, but finding Mr. Brackman there, a struggle ensued and Mr. Brackman ended up dead. And because this murder took place during a felony, it makes it felony murder.
Thank you, Detective Markowitz. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Detective Markowitz, would you consider yourself an expert at your job?
Yeah, I have extensive training and experience, and I've been doing this for a long time, so I am.
And would you say with your level of expertise, you would follow through with all procedure?
Of course.
and you would follow up on all possible leads. Is that correct?
Yep, I always follow the evidence and see where it takes me.
Yet you didn't follow up on the lead of an ex-client. Is that correct?
It seemed a little too, I don't know, law and order-y for me, and I didn't really get any evidence that led me to an ex-client, but I did receive evidence that led me to Avery Becker.
You said a little bit law and ordery, so that's preventing you from following up on a possible lead?
As I said, the evidence did not take me to any of Mr. Brackman's ex-clients. It took me to Avery Becker.
But that's because you didn't actually look into any evidence that would follow up on a possible lead, correct?
I just followed the evidence that I gathered from the crime scene.
And at the crime scene, you found blood, right?
Yes, there was blood spatter on the floor and walls.
And you found blood on the shirt of Mr. Brackman, correct?
Obviously, being stabbed in the back.
But the blood that you found all came from a stab wound, correct?
Yes.
So let me get this straight. The only blood on the scene is from Brackman pulling out the knife, correct? That's what you said in your statement?
Yes.
And there's no blood in the kitchen or in the hallway, is that correct?
That was prior to the victim being stabbed.
And no blood from anyone except Mr. Brackman, correct?
Well, I'm assuming that the perpetrator was not stabbed. It was just Mr. Brackman's blood. That is correct.
So when you claim there was a great struggle, correct?
I claim there was a struggle, not necessarily a great one.
But there's no blood except for the stab wound, correct?
There was blood on the floor and walls.
No, but we already established that you said that the only blood was from pulling out the stab wound, correct? That's what you just said before?
Yes.
Right, thank you. And now you spoke with a Miss Cifuentes, is that correct?
I did.
And did you accept screenshots instead of their phone?
I did accept the screenshots because they aligned with what the witness had told me.
Right, but you are aware that screenshots can be faked, correct?
I'm aware of that.
So as a trained professional, you accepted screenshots that can be faked instead of looking at the phone. Is that correct?
I did accept the screenshots. I do believe that they are adequate evidence for this case.
But you did say that they could be faked.
Correct? Possible, but I don't think it happened.
Okay, and you also said that a cell phone usually connects with the best available tower, correct?
That's correct. This is usually the closest one.
Sorry, but not necessarily the closest, correct?
Most often it is the closest one. In rare occasions, it can connect with cell towers further away, but this isn't likely.
All right, thank you. So to recap, on the scene, you found no blood except for from the stab wound, correct?
Yes.
That doesn't look like it's a struggle, correct?
I disagree. I do believe that there was a struggle.
But you have no blood splattered to prove that, correct?
Blood spatter is not necessarily indicative of a struggle.
Okay, thank you. And you accepted screenshots that you admitted could be faked, correct?
I did accept these screenshots because they aligned with what Alex Cifuentes had told me before.
And you said that a cell phone can connect with not necessarily the closest tower, but the best available one, correct?
Yes, this is usually the closest, however.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, do you believe you gathered enough evidence to support your conclusions in this case?
Absolutely. I believe that the evidence that I've gathered is strong, and it led me to Avery Becker.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. I'm going to give our scorekeepers just a moment to catch up before I ask the people for their next witness. The people may call their next witness.
The prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Would you please state your name and spell the last for the record?
Counsel, let me swear our witness in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Would you please state your name and spell the last for the record?
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
Do you know the defendant, Avery Becker?
Yes.
How do you know of her?
I go to Colorado High School with her and I'm a member of the mock trial team with her as well.
And how would you describe your relationship?
We have an amicable relationship and we're far from rivals.
How did you see Avery and Mr. Brackman interacting at mock trial practices?
Well, Avery often came to mock trial practice unprepared and made things up on the fly, much to Mr. Brackman's annoyance.
Did you witness any incidents between Avery and Mr. Brackman?
Yes. Once Mr. Brackman brought up that same point and Avery got so mad that she grabbed a Sharpie and wrote Worst Attorney Award on the hood of Mr. Brackman's 1986 Porsche 911.
What happened after the vandalism?
She was kicked off the team for good.
And did you experience anything that made you feel like Avery was upset about being kicked off the team?
Yes. Avery texted me asking me to talk to Mr. Brackman in her behalf. When Mr. Brackman said that she wouldn't be allowed on the team again, Avery texted me, if Mr. Brackman thought he was upset about what I did to his car, wait till he sees what I do to his house.
What did you do when you received that text?
I was confused and I asked Avery what she meant by that. And she told me that she meant to go to Mr. Brackman's house while he was at work and trash the place.
After Avery allegedly murdered Mr. Brackman, did the detectives reach out to you?
Yes, they did. I didn't want to rat Avery out, but this is a murder trial, so I let them know about the text messages that Avery sent me, and they asked me to go down to the station for a full interview.
And did you have your phone at this interview?
Unfortunately, I did not.
Why not?
My phone was getting old and it didn't hold charge for long, so I put on the charger before I left to make sure that I had the screenshots ready. But when my dad yelled that it was time to go, I left in such a rush that I forgot it on the cord. Luckily, the detective said that the screenshots were just fine.
Permission for our timekeeper to screen share Exhibit 14.
I'm sorry. Yes, you may. My microphone was muted.
Would you please identify Exhibit 14?
These are the text messages between myself and Avery that I mentioned previously.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Have they been altered in any way?
No, they have not.
And how do you know these texts are from Avery?
I have Avery's number in my phone, so I'm positive they're from her.
Your Honor, we move for the admission of what has previously been marked as Exhibit 14 into evidence as in pursuit of Rule 702.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection, best evidence, admissibility of duplicates.
And any response from the people?
Your Honor, these screenshots have been used as evidence in the station, and these have been verified by the detective as being an accurate representation.
I will overrule the objection and Exhibit 14 is admitted.
Where is your phone now?
Well, because my phone was getting old, it didn't hold charge for long. I traded in for a new one about 3 months ago, and I don't know what they did with it after I traded it in.
Do you know Blair Rollins?
Yes, I go to school with her.
How would you describe your relationship?
I don't have any sort of meaningful relationship with Rollins. We barely know each other well enough to say hello or goodbye in the hallway.
And how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was a very talented coach and litigator who I looked up to and respected very much.
Would you ever do anything to harm Mr. Brackman?
I would never. He was our beloved coach, and I would never do anything to put him in harm's way.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Hello, Ms. Fuentes. You work very hard in mock trial. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And isn't it true that you spend a considerable amount of time writing for mock trial?
Yes.
And you not only spend time writing, but you also have to practice for mock trial.
Yes.
And on top of all of that, you have to memorize loads of information for mock trial. Is that correct?
Yes.
From what you've observed, Avery Becker does not work nearly as hard as you do. Is that right?
We have different styles.
Miss Becker seemed to just waltz into competitions unprepared, correct?
Yes.
And yet, Miss Becker, not you, won Best Attorney Award at the regional tournament. Isn't that true?
Some of us don't need outside validation to know that we're successful, but yes, Avery did win the award.
And so it irked you, did it not, that you had put in so much hard work? Meanwhile, Avery won all the awards?
No, I don't need Avery's validation or anyone else's to know I'm successful. I know it'll serve me well when I'm a real lawyer.
But Ms. Fuentes, do you recall that you were asked to prepare a witness statement in this case, correct?
Yes.
Permission to screen share the witness statement to the jury. Sorry, I think you're muted, Your Honor.
Thank you. I apologize. Yes, you may screen share.
Thank you, Your Honor. And here's a copy of your witness statement. And Ms. Fuentes, you signed this witness statement and promised that if anything was wrong or anything new came up, you would change it, correct?
Yes, of course.
And in your statement, you say, quote, Avery was just coasting on good luck, or sorry, you say, quote, one moment. You say, quote, I spent so much time honing my craft that it sort of irked me when Avery would just come in and make things up as the examination went along. These are your words, correct?
Yes, emphasis on sort of.
So then you do believe that, or that it did irk you when Avery won these awards, even if it was sort of, as you say.
Yes, only slightly, but you got to keep the big picture in mind, and the big picture is not mock trial, but real trials.
So you believe that Avery was just getting by on good looks and not because of any real talent?
Yes.
Now I'd like to turn your attention to the day before Mackenzie Brackman's murder. You were at the Fry Shack that night, correct?
I was.
And Miss Becker and Miss Perkins, they were there as well. Is that right?
Yes.
And at the Fry Shack, you had Miss Becker's phone, didn't you?
She let me play a game on her phone, yeah.
So you had her phone. You were holding it in your hands, correct?
Yes, but I didn't steal it or anything.
Now I'd like to talk about the day you went in to be interviewed about your coach's murder. Ms. Fuentes, you claim that you received text messages from Avery the day of Brackman's car vandalization. Is that right?
I did.
And what Miss Becker is saying in these alleged text messages is crucial to making the claim that she is the killer of Mr. Brackman. Would you say so?
Yes, I guess I would say so.
And these text messages, they were located on your phone, correct?
Yes, she did text them to me.
And yet, knowing how crucial this information is to making the claim that Avery killed Mr. Brackman, you did not bring your phone to the police station. Isn't that right?
Yes, as I mentioned, I forgot on the cord, but I did provide the detective with the exact screenshots of the text.
After you left your house to go to the police station, do you recall when you first realized you left your phone at home?
Yes.
And when was that?
At the station, I believe.
But even then, you did not drive back home and retrieve your phone. Isn't that right?
Well, I asked the detectives, and they said the screenshots were a fair and accurate representation. And
I'm sorry. So can we see your phone now then?
No, I traded in about 3 months ago for a new one. So that's how the exchange works. So I don't have it anymore.
So, Ms. Fuentes, are you saying that to this day, the only person that has seen these supposed text messages, the text messages that you have said are crucial to making the claim that Avery killed Mr. Brackman, on your actual, these text messages on your actual phone, is you?
Yes, I guess you would say that. But I did have the screenshots, and I'm not the one on trial here. I don't have a reason to lie about that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Fuentes, did you offer to bring your phone back to the station?
Yes, I did.
And how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was an amazing coach, and I looked up to him so much. I would never do anything to put him in harm's way.
And do you understand the difference between mock trial and real trial?
I do, yes. Any little irk that might happen from mock trial, I wouldn't let it get in the way of my future.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Is there any other evidence from the people?
No, Your Honor.
Do the people rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll give our scorekeepers just a moment to finish any marks that they need to make. All right, for the defense, is there any evidence for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Blake Van Owen to the stand.
Thank you. And will you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
You may proceed, counsel.
Professor, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Professor Blake Van Owen.
And Professor, what do you do for a living?
I work as a private investigator, expert witness in mainly police practice, and professor. I have served as an expert witness in over 100 cases on a range of topics, including crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general investigation tactics. I also used to be a police officer with the Aurora Police Department for 9 months between 2005 and 2006, and I have a master's degree in criminal justice and bachelor in arts in English, and I am now a professor who teaches a course on police practices and social justice at CU Denver.
Your Honor, I offer Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in the field of homicide investigation and cell tower analysis.
Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Professor Van Owen will be accepted as an expert in those fields. You may proceed.
Professor, you were only a police officer with the Aurora Police Department for 9 months. Can you explain why?
During my time as a police officer with the APD, I ended up injuring a young woman of color using all top police practices, but she ended up suing me and the APD individually, and I was cleared of wrongdoing.
How has this incident impacted you?
I've used this error as a silver lining for now, and I teach a course on police practices and social justice because of this incident. This incident has led me to see the faults within police's ways, and I use my mistakes as a learning experience for the credibility of police departments as a broader community.
And Professor, you have always testified on the side of the defense. Why is that?
I could just as easily say that Detective Markowitz is always on the side of the prosecution. Defense has to hire someone like me who's an expert in police practices because the prosecution already has cops on their side to testify for free.
Thank you for clarifying that. Now on to the case. Professor, what is your theory of what happened in the moments leading up to Mr. Brackman's murder?
I believe that Mr. Brackman was sitting down in his kitchen when an intruder, who was of the same general build as Brackman was, entered Brackman's home with a knife and purposefully stabbed Brackman in the back, and it was all premeditated.
And what is the physical evidence that helped you come to the conclusion that the murder was in fact premeditated?
The autopsy report and reconstruction of the knife position, reconstruction ring videos, cell tower reports, past clients of Mackenzie Brackman, and knife dimensions.
And what is your explanation for the scuff marks found on the floor of Brackman's kitchen?
Scuff marks could have been made at any time. When I'm sitting at my kitchen, I scoop back a little, the chair creates a mark on the ground, and we have no carbon dates to know that these scuff marks have been made in the intention of a struggle.
What do you think about the prosecution's theory about the ring notifications?
I'm aware that the prosecution claims that ring notifications would have alerted Mr. Brackman of the intruder, but I believe that this could also have been different. As a user of Ring doorbell, I know that push notifications can be turned off. So he could have simply just not looked at his phone and he got a notification, or he could have just been consumed in something else that he didn't pay attention to these notifications.
What is your understanding of how the knife would have been held to create Brackman's stab wound?
The knife would have been facing downward in order to create this wound. This method is a little bit less common than the reverse position, but it's not that uncommon. In order to create this exact wound to the aorta at the same angle, the intruder must have used significant force and have been standing above them, which leads me to believe that Brackman was sitting while the intruder surprised him.
And do you have any photographs demonstrating this position?
Yes, I do. I published an exhibit on it.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of Exhibit 21.
Any objection to Exhibit 21?
No, Your Honor.
21 is admitted.
Permission to publish Exhibit 21 to the jury.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Professor, could you give us a brief explanation for this knife and including the angle of it?
As I've demonstrated in this photo, the knife would have been facing downwards in this exact angle to create the wound in Brackman's body. And again, this photo demonstrates the position of the knife being above in order to recreate this exact penetration to the aorta.
And Professor, what is your opinion as to the quality of investigation as conducted by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak in this case?
Unfortunately, the police just did such a faulty job in investigating this crime. They rushed, and by rushing, I mean they skipped and missed a whole bunch of conclusions, and they made assumptions. Markowitz and Kuzak made numerous unprofessional statements in their investigation. They rushed and made countless assumptions. To name a few, they assumed the murder weapon and the knife block, which the knife doesn't even fit the dimensions of the knife block. They failed to provide the blood splatters. They lost, very funny how they lost the photos of the blood. They failed to look at Brackman's further clients, obtain the actual phone, assumptions of the scuff marks, etc.
And what steps did you take to think through possible suspects for Brackman's murder?
As I said before, I looked through all of the evidence, Mr. Brackman's past clients. I looked at the evidence through an unobjective, unbiased lens. I looked through all these evidence and found my result.
Sorry, Professor, just to clarify, do you mean objective, not unobjective?
Sorry, my bad.
And was there any evidence pointing to this ex-client or this person you have mentioned, Blair Rollins?
Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. What did you say?
What was the evidence that helped you come to the conclusion that Blair Rollins is a more likely suspect than Avery?
Blair Rollins's father claimed to have said something in a trial to threaten and prove what I say.
And was there a recording of this statement?
Yes.
Did you listen to this recording?
Yes, I did.
And listening to a recording like this, is that information that experts in your field routinely rely upon?
Yes, very often.
Did the recording provide insight regarding the motive for killing Mr. Brackman?
For sure.
Professor, I would now like you to look at what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 22. Would you identify this, please?
Exhibit 22 is an audio recording of Blair Rollins's father at the end of his trial after Mr. Brackman lost his case, yelling out that he would get Brackman back.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of exhibit 22.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 22 is admitted.
Permission to publish exhibit 22 to the jury.
You may.
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
That was just to clarify for the jury, that was the recording of Jonathan Rollins after his trial with Mr. Brackman, representing him. Now, Professor, switching topics, do you consider the prosecution to have adequately investigated all those with potential motives for killing Mr. Brackman?
Not at all. I think we all can agree that getting kicked off a mock trial team is hardly a reason to murder someone. And as we've shown, Blair Rollins has a much stronger motive to murder Brackman than Avery did.
In conclusion, after analyzing all the facts and all the possibilities, do you believe Avery Becker murdered Mackenzie Brackman?
One thing I know for certain is that Avery Becker is innocent and Blair Rollins has far stronger motive.
Thank you, Professor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Hello, Professor Van Owen. Thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. While listing your credentials, you mentioned you are being paid to be here. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you said you're being paid about $450 per hour to testify today. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said you expected to make at least $8,000 off of this case, correct?
Yes, because if I'm being paid hourly and I have to do a really diligent job, I have to go through all of the long lists of mistakes made by the police.
Let's move on to the investigation. In order to contribute to this case, you conducted your own partial investigation, didn't you?
Sure.
So you reviewed the findings of the detectives and looked into potential missteps, but you yourself did not conduct a full investigation, correct?
What do you mean by that?
You searched specifically for faults in the work of the prosecution's detectives, but you yourself did not conduct a full investigation. Is that correct?
I did conduct a full investigation, but I also found the errors within their words.
I believe line 62 of your witness statement says you only conducted a partial investigation. Which one is it?
I never said that I didn't conduct a partial investigation.
Did you not just say you conducted a full investigation?
My mistake.
So your only mention of your investigation in your witness statement was when you admitted an oversight on your part, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And going back to your credentials, you mentioned you have past experience with the Aurora Police Department, correct?
I do.
However, you quit after an unfortunate incident, one that left you with a negative impression of police tactics. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And am I correct in that you have only ever testified for the defense?
I believe that I mentioned with my direct as to why.
Would you say this could be because you are generally distrustful of law enforcement and their ability to perform investigations?
No, I always am on the side of the defense, but also I see that the Aurora Police Department makes a lot of mistakes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Professor, I'm aware that you routinely testify on the side of the defense, and you are paid to do so. But does this affect your approach of investigating the case in any way?
No, not at all.
No further questions.
Thank you. The defense may call their next witness.
Your Honor, we now call to stand Ms. Taylor Perkins for the defense.
Ms. Perkins, will you raise your right hand? And do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Counsel, you may proceed.
Ms. Perkins, can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Taylor Perkins, and I'm a freshman at CU Boulder.
And how do you know Ms. Becker?
Avery and I were really close friends in high school.
Okay, now going back to last year, was she on mock trial during the period of time where Mr. Brackman passed away?
No, she was not. She had actually just been kicked off the team.
And why was that?
Her and Coach Brackman always got in little arguments. They were never too big, but I think this one went a little too far in Brackman's eyes, and he kicked her off the team.
Were you on mock trial during the same period of time?
I was not, no.
And why was that?
I had stepped down because Avery had gotten demoted to B team, and I thought it was my job as her friend to step down so that way she could get her spot back on A team, because the team meant a lot more to her than it did to me.
All right, moving to the night before Brackman's death, March 5th. What happened that night?
That night, Avery and I went to the Fry Shack, and after that, I think we went to the mall.
Okay, so starting at the Fry Shack, what happened while you were at the Fry Shack with Avery?
When we were at the Fry Shack, lots of people showed up. It was the entire mock trial team, and it definitely riled Avery up. She definitely was pretty upset about it, and Alex Cifuentes was there too.
Now, Ms. Perkins, who is Alex Cifuentes?
Alex Cifuentes, well, Avery and I have been on mock trial with him for about 4 years, or it was 4 years. And I don't know, Alex, there's something about Alex. He's never really been on either I or Avery's good side. He's pretty rude to both of us, especially Avery, because he's just always been jealous of Avery's success.
Okay, so on the night of the Fry Shack, how did Avery and Alex interact from your observation?
Well, what I saw was that Alex was all over Avery, kind of picking on her because she had just been kicked off the mock trial team, and was on her phone also, which I noticed. And yeah, he was just being pretty rude to Avery.
And how did Avery react to that?
Objection.
Avery was pretty upset about it.
Calls for speculation.
Any response to the objection as to speculation?
Submitted as the witness's own observations as she was there with both the defendant and the other third party.
And any reply to that?
No, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled. You may proceed.
All right, I will ask you again. How did Avery respond to Alex's behavior that night?
Avery was definitely pretty upset about it. She went into the bathroom just to kind of cool down. And then after that, I think me and Avery decided to leave.
Where'd you go from there?
After that, we went to the mall and just sort of shopped around a little to kind of blow off some steam.
And then did you go anywhere after that?
No, after that, me and Avery went our separate ways and went back to our own houses.
Okay, now moving to the morning of the murder, March 6th. That morning, how did the day start for you?
I woke up and I called and texted Avery to see where she was, because normally we carpool to school every morning. And when I noticed she hadn't responded, I drove over to her house to see where she was and what was going on.
And did you ask her why she wasn't responding to your calls as she normally does?
Yeah, I did. And she said that her phone was missing and she couldn't find it anywhere.
Well, what did you guys do when you realized your phone was missing?
The first thing we did was call and texted it to make sure if anyone was nearby, they could pick up the phone, or if we could hear it anywhere. But sadly, that was unsuccessful.
Once it was unsuccessful, what other steps did you guys take to recover her phone?
After that, we went and decided to retrace our steps. We skipped school that day because it was pretty unimportant. And we first went to the mall and looked in all the stores we went to.
Did you find it at the mall?
No, we didn't. We were unsuccessful once again.
And then from the mall, then where else did you go to retrace your steps?
The last place we went and the next place we went was the Fry Shack.
And when you were at the Fry Shack, did you find the phone?
No, we didn't, but the entire mock trial team was there, which was pretty weird because it was the time where they would normally be in mock trial.
Did you ask them why they weren't at practice?
Yeah, they told us that Coach Brackman had never actually shown up to practice that night.
And now, lastly, Ms. Perkins, you can confirm you were with Avery Becker all day.
Yes, I was.
All right, no further questions.
Thank you. And, excuse me, cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins, you and Avery were very close, correct?
Yeah, we were.
Are you a loyal friend to Avery?
I guess you could say that. She was one of my closest friends.
Is Avery impulsive or does things without thinking them through?
I've seen her do it a couple times, but normally she has some pretty good self-control.
Avery has shown up to practice and improvised many things, correct?
Yes, she is pretty good at mock trial.
You are aware that Avery was demoted to B team, yes?
Yes.
What did you do once Avery was demoted?
I thought it would be best for me to step down, especially because the team meant a lot to Avery and mock trial didn't really mean as much as it did to me. So I decided to step down so that she could regain her spot on A team.
With that, you weren't there for the following practices once Avery rejoined A team, yes?
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Has Avery ever given you cause not to trust them?
No.
With that, do you believe almost everything Avery tells you?
A majority of things, but I definitely have my own opinions, yes.
Your house is in between Brackman's and Avery's, yes?
Could you repeat that? Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out.
Your house is in between Brackman's and Avery's, yes?
Correct, yes.
So the length of time to get from either Brackman's house to your house and Avery's house to your house is estimately the same, yes?
I mean, I've never driven to Brackman's house, so I wouldn't know, but I definitely drive to Avery's house, so I can't compare the two.
On that day of Brackman's death, you and Avery had first period off, yes?
Yes, we did.
So Avery picked you up later than school originally starts.
I actually went to go pick up Avery, so because she wasn't responding to any of my texts.
Brackman and Avery often did not get along, yes?
They had their fights, but overall, they had a pretty neutral relationship full of ups and downs occasionally.
What was the relationship like between Brackman and Avery?
Objection, speculation.
Any response?
Your Honor, it is not speculation because the witness has firsthand observations with both the relationship between Brackman and Avery.
Any reply?
Yes, but the question implied asking her opinion on what the relationship was between the two. Information only both individual parties, which she is not a part of, would know.
I will overrule the objection. The witness may answer that question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. What was the relationship like between Avery and Mr. Brackman?
The relationship definitely had their ups and downs. Occasionally, one of them would bother the other, but nothing really extreme would happen between the two.
With your observations, they often did not get along, yes?
Occasionally, but overall, they just had a pretty normal coach and, I guess, student relationship.
What was the relation? And Avery has already committed vandalism on Brackman's property, yes?
Accidental, and it was definitely a mistake on Avery's part, but she regrets it very much.
What was the relationship like between Alex and Avery to your observations?
once again, Alex really just wasn't a very nice person towards Avery or I. The relationship wasn't very positive. Alex was always criticizing Avery and jealous of her success.
Again, I will repeat this question. On the day of Brackman's death, Avery had picked you up from your house, yes?
I believe I picked her up.
In your witness statement on line 72, it says, the next morning, March 6th, Avery picked me up at my house. Yes?
My apologies, I must have mixed up the two, but yes, she did pick me up.
Avery did text Alex to try to get back on the team, to your knowledge, yes?
I believe she texted almost everyone on the team. It may have included Alex Cifuentes. However, I wasn't in any of the text messages or involved in any of them, so I can't really confirm that.
You referred to Avery's phone as their third kidney, correct?
I believe I did. Avery, it's pretty normal for teenagers to have an attachment to their phone.
So don't you think it's possible for Avery to lose their phone that morning?
I mean, I don't think it's possible, especially because I don't know the whereabouts of the phone. And the last place I saw it was at the Fry Shack.
Did it not strike you as odd that it took Avery so long to realize it was missing?
Not necessarily. I mean, after what happened at the Fry Shack, she was pretty riled up. So she didn't really want to go on her phone anyways, or at least that's what I observed. So I didn't really see her on her phone, so it didn't really catch me as abnormal.
Thank you. That will be all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. All right, Ms. Perkins, would you say you guys use your phones often when you spend time with Avery?
Not necessarily. I mean, when I spend time with Avery, I really just want to spend time with Avery and not be on my phone.
And is it normal to not use your phone when spending time with your friends?
It's pretty normal. I don't really tend to go on my phone that much, especially when I'm around my friends.
Would you say that Avery's unpreparedness is indicative of something larger?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think Avery's she's a pretty well-rounded person. Sometimes she can get a little overwhelmed with the work she has to do. That's why she was pretty overwhelmed with mock trials sometimes, but I wouldn't really say it says much about her as a person.
And would you say you trust Avery like you would trust any other friend?
Yes, I trust Avery.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give our scorers a moment to catch up. Next witness for the defense.
Your Honor, the defense calls Avery Becker to the stand.
Ms. Becker, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, counsel, you may proceed.
Ms. Becker, you are here, a high school student, being accused of murder. How do you feel?
Scared, mad, nervous. There's not really one word to encompass how I'm feeling.
And what is your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
He was my mock trial coach for 4 years.
And do you enjoy mock trial?
I do. I've always been naturally pretty good at it, and you tend to like things that you're naturally good at. So yes, I'd say I enjoyed it.
Do you have a lot of friends on the team?
My best friend, Taylor Perkins, is on the team with me. And I was friends with most of the other teammates, except for Alex Cifuentes, whom I don't like very much.
Why did you get kicked off the A team and demoted to B team?
Brackman and I had a few arguments, And he would always call me lazy and thought I didn't put in the work it took to be on the A team. And so because of these assumptions, he demoted me.
And why did you get put back onto the A team?
Well, Taylor decided she didn't really care for mock trial if I wasn't going to be on the team. And so she decided to quit. And so I took her position because I was the only person who knew these lines and who could do the part as well as anyone else, if not better.
Did you do well at the regional tournament?
I did. I won Best Attorney Award.
And did your coach celebrate that victory?
He didn't. He criticized me and thought I wasn't deserving. But I knew deep down inside that I was worthy of the award because I'd won it.
And what was your response to his criticism?
I don't really overreact or react to his criticism that he had criticized me in the past. And all of this was sort of bottled up. And once he criticized me for what I had done wrong during the regional tournament, I reacted rashly and I took what I thought was the dry erase marker and I drew on the hood of his car Worst Attorney Award, which immediately after I had done, I knew was an awful decision.
And what did Mr. Brackman do when he saw his car?
He was visibly angry, as he should have been. And right then and there, he kicked me off the mock trial team altogether.
And was that your last encounter with Mr. Brackman?
Unfortunately, yes. I reached out, I called his secretary, I told him I would scrub the marker off, I would get a job to repaint the hood of his car, and unfortunately, I never saw or spoke to him again.
During the day of the murder, were you with anyone?
I was with Taylor, looking for my phone, which I had lost the night before.
And did you purposefully lose your phone the day before?
I don't know why someone would purposefully lose their phone. No.
And why didn't you notice it was missing before?
Well, typically my mom takes my phone at night and sometimes she looks around in my bag for it. So I just thought she had taken it and didn't realize it was gone until the next morning.
And were you with Miss Perkins the entire day?
Yes, I went and picked her up and we decided to skip school since there was nothing really important going on to go retrace our steps and look for it.
Miss Becker, did you text Miss Cifuentes to get back onto the team?
Like I said, I don't like Alex. I would never text her.
So you know nothing about the text messages that she claims?
No.
Finally, Miss Becker, why do you think you're being accused of murder?
I think that this argument and these arguments I had with my coach are being blown way out of proportion. I wrote on his car, but it was an accident and I regretted it. And just because of that, I wouldn't murder him. I would never murder Coach Brackman, no matter how angry he made me. I wouldn't. And I think that Alex has always been jealous of me, and
Objection.
this is her one shot to.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is speculating to Alex's emotional being and feelings towards Mr. Brackman.
Any response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. This is an observation from Miss Becker because she was on the mock trial team with Alex for years and saw the relationship.
Any reply?
Your Honor, Avery, Ms. Becker can testify to how she feels her and Alex's interaction and relationships went, but in terms of Alex's feeling towards Mr. Brackman, Avery cannot testify. She's testified of not knowing Alex well.
Thank you, counsel. The objection is overruled and you may proceed.
Finally, Ms. Becker, should you be convicted of murder?
No, I didn't commit this murder. I would never even imagine committing this murder. And my whole life is still ahead of me, and it could be ruined for something I didn't do. I did not commit this murder, and I hope that everyone here knows that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Becker. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about the case today. So your best friend, Taylor, quit the mock trial team, right, to reinstate your position. Is that correct?
She didn't quit for me. She just didn't find it valuable if I wasn't there.
Did her quitting reinstate your position on the team?
It
Yes.
did, but that's not the reason she did it.
Was she aware that it would reinstate your position on the team?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Would you consider Taylor a loyal friend?
I would, yes.
Okay, moving on to the practice after the regional competition. Mr. Brackman had a discussion with you about preparation, and you left this conversation angrily, did you not?
I did.
And after storming out of the classroom, you left the building and vandalized Mr. Brackman's car.
Your Honor, objection, relevance.
What's your response to the relevance objection?
Your Honor, I'm laying foundation to a possible motive.
The objection is overruled.
I'll repeat the question. After you stormed out and you left the building and vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, yes?
I thought it was a dry erase marker, which is different than a permanent marker, which it ended up being. So it was an accident, and I regretted it immediately after.
If it had been a dry erase marker, you would have drawn on the car with the dry erase marker, yes?
It would have come off.
You would have vandalized the car with the dry erase marker, yes?
It would have come off, so that's not vandalism.
Okay. So it was a Sharpie, and you ended up vandalizing Mr. Brackman's car. Is that accurate?
Regretfully so, yes.
Okay, moving on to after that incident. You left school and went home, did you not?
I did.
And you didn't tell your mom the whole truth, did you?
She didn't ask me, and I didn't feel the need to.
So you told her parts of the timeline, so she knew about the night. Yes?
Yes.
And so she wouldn't have known to ask about vandalism, yes?
Your Honor, objection, relevance.
Any response?
Your Honor, I am laying down foundation of a experience where Ms. Becker did not tell the full truth to adults, trusted adults.
Any reply?
Yes, this is a past mistake. This has nothing to do with the current matter at hand.
Thank you. I will overrule the objection. You may proceed.
I'll repeat the question for you. So your mom did not know to ask about the vandalism, yes?
I guess not.
Okay. And then you joined the mock trial team to be on your phone more, yes?
Originally, yeah, but then I realized I had a natural knack for mock trial, and I really enjoyed it.
Yes. We'll go to the original. You joined with the intent to be on your phone more. And this is because your mom took your phone at night, yes?
Like I said, she did, yeah.
Okay. And on the morning of March 6th, you testified that you realized your phone was missing.
Yes, I couldn't find it anywhere.
And I'll reiterate this question. Your mom takes your phone at night? Yes?
Yeah, when I get home, I either leave it on the counter or it's in my bag, and she looks through my bag, finds it, and takes it. And so that's just something I knew would happen, and I didn't really think much of it.
Okay. I'm confused because I don't see where you mentioned your mom digging the phone out of your bag.
She takes my phone. That's just
She does
how she.
ensure that she has your phone, though.
Yeah, she takes
Yes. Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Becker, when your mom takes your phone, do you always know that she takes it?
No, she takes it out of my bag sometimes, so I just assume she has it.
So
That's
it's
Your Honor.
Counsel, go ahead.
This statement is not in the witness's statement.
I think perhaps some audio cut out, so I did not hear an objection. Will you tell me an objection again?
The statement the witness just made is not in the witness statement.
All right, so are you arguing unfair extrapolation?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is there any response on that?
Yes. This is just added specifics. It doesn't really affect anything.
All right, just a moment. Timekeeper, please stop time for a moment. All right, for our scoring panelists, there is an objection for unfair extrapolation. And so I need to read some information to you. You, the scoring panelists, are the sole arbiters of the dispute based upon your own individual observations, good faith judgment, and consistent with the intent of the judicial process. You may decide that there was no extrapolation, or the statement was not unfair extrapolation, or the question did not ask for unfair extrapolation as it was not material, or the statement was unfair extrapolation, or the question was asking for unfair extrapolation as it was material. The ultimate decision is in the discretion of each of you individual scoring panelists. Consistently with your decision, you may award one or more points, deduct one or more points, or take no action at all with respect to any of the parties involved. If you determine that there was no unfair extrapolation, or that there was no question asking for unfair extrapolation, you may deduct one or more points from the objecting party if you believe that the objection was not made in good faith, was improvident, or was poor sportsmanship. Your decision is final. And I'm going to give our scoring panelists just a moment to consider my instruction, and then we'll resume. All right, counsel, you may proceed.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. All right, just a moment, everyone. All right, any other evidence from the defense?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests.
Is there any rebuttal from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor. Prosecution rests.
All right. And we'll begin opening statements in just a moment. I wanted to give our scoring panelists a moment. Closing argument for the prosecution.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Olivia Link, and I am one of the prosecutors in this case. This case is a textbook example of impulsive behavior when confronted and the often dire consequences of said impulsivity. The prosecution's 3 witnesses were called to testify to the defendant's guilt. Each witness testified as explained, and we have established the following facts beyond a reasonable doubt. That on the day of March 6, 2020, the defendant entered into the victim's residence illegally and struck the victim with a deadly weapon, and that the defendant acted without self-defense. Becker has a history of lying to adults, acting on harmful impulses when confronted, and using the tools easily accessible to act on these whims. Sometimes this manifests as drawing on a car and permanent marker, but this time Becker's impulsivity had severe consequences which cost Brackman his life. Avery spoke repeatedly about regretting her actions, but just as Sharpie cannot be removed from the car, the knife cannot be removed from Brackman's body. Our expert witnesses testified to the fact that Becker's phone was somewhere near Brackman's house on the day of his murder. Becker skipped school that day, so the only alibi she has comes from Taylor Perkins, who has an obvious motive to lie and protect her best friend. Cifuentes testified to the tense and explosive relationship between the defendant and the victim, one that worsened leading up to the day of the victim's murder. The evidence points to an attempted vandalism gone wrong, an act of retribution that escalated past trashing Brackman's house, and this has been established beyond a reasonable doubt. We would ask that you reject the defense's theories in this case. The first of said theories is that Blair Rollins is the most logical suspect, which provides the exact problem with that conclusion in and of itself. Good police work supports the true conclusion, not the easy one. The defense repeatedly suggests Avery Becker to be a victim of convenience, but let us consider the convenience of Blair Rollins as a scapegoat instead. The defense believes Rollins has the motive to murder because Brackman sent his father to jail. That is, the defense is making the grand assumption that Blair wishes to avenge their father. And I would like to remind you, members of the jury, that Avery Becker is on trial today, not Blair Rollins. The second of these theories is that the work of our extremely qualified detectives is incomplete, despite the fact that the defense only conducted a partial investigation that searched specifically for faults in Markowitz's and Kuzak's work. It is also important to note that Van Owen never directly examined the evidence. The defense will have you believe Avery lost her phone and was therefore not at the scene of the crime, but Avery herself admits to being attached to her phone, and the idea she took several hours to notice the phone's disappearance is laughable. This claim is made even more doubtful by the fact that Avery's mom takes her phone away every night. Another one of the defense's theories is that Alex and Blair plotted to frame Avery for murder. And what, pray tell, is their explanation for this? Jealousy. It is abundantly clear the defense is grasping at straws, and they will settle for any excuse, no matter how ridiculous. Another reminder, we are not proving Becker to be a cold-blooded murderer, but simply an impulsive person who reacts poorly and rashly to confrontation. Additionally, our witnesses are credible, and their statements are consistent and reliable. On the other hand, the defense's witnesses have problematic financial and relationship biases, which prevent them from establishing any kind of doubt regarding the defendant's guilt. The defendant, of course, has the motive to lie because it would acquit them of all responsibility. Therefore, the defense has no reliable witnesses. In fact, the defense's witnesses themselves testified to Becker's impulsivity and improvisation, the very same impulsivity and improvisation that had fatal consequences for one Mackenzie Brackman. Justice and accountability cannot be dismissed in this case because of the defense and their excuses. In conclusion, the prosecution has met the burden of proof, and we would ask that you find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Closing argument for the defense.
Avery Becker, a high school student, sits in front of you today on trial for a crime she did not commit. She sits in front of you here today being accused for the murder of her coach, a person she saw every single day for weeks at a time for 4 years straight, a person she was extremely close with. She is 18 years old. Did she commit this crime? No, she did not. She has a clear alibi. She was with her friend, Taylor Perkins, the entire day, retracing her steps through the fry shack and the mall, trying to find her phone. Avery Becker was obviously not near Mr. Brackman's house during the murder. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you heard the prosecution. They claim there was a great struggle between Mr. Brackman and the intruder. With what evidence? A couple of scuff marks that cannot be dated, scuff marks that could have been made at any day, any given time, scuff marks that could be years old, or perhaps a broken plate. A single broken plate was the only thing out of place at Coach Brackman's house when there was a struggle. Now, if this struggle between the intruder and Mr. Brackman was so great, where is all the blood? Wouldn't you expect blood splatter to be all over? How could there be struggle with just a few mere marks of it? The prosecution's theory is flawed yet again with the Ring security camera. The prosecution believes a video of someone with the generic build of Avery Becker is enough to convict her? When Avery Becker is of average height, and there are so many others that could fit that physical description. What the prosecution lacks is forensic evidence. Are there any footprints? Are there any fingerprints? There is nothing specific at all that actually points to Avery Becker as the intruder. There is not enough evidence to convict this high school student because she did not do it. There is disagreement between trained professionals as to what happened, a total lack of information. An expert witness says the murder was premeditated, not an accident. Evidence shows the knife used to kill Mr. Brackman was an entirely different brand than those at Brackman's house. This murder was premeditated. How can we accept the prosecution's theories when there is proof something else occurred? The evidence the prosecution presented doesn't prove this was a burglary gone wrong. The evidence the prosecution presented doesn't prove Avery Becker is guilty. There is reasonable doubt everywhere. Detective Markowitz stated that a cell phone connects with the best available tower, not the closest. This is not evidence. This is a theory that can be doubted. The evidence witnesses have brought forth are contradicting. There is so much gray area. So why is a high school student being put on trial? Is it because it's the most convenient for the prosecution? They tried to string along a theory that they came to by cutting corners in this investigation. They didn't follow through with all possible leads. They didn't look at all the evidence they were presented with and then drew conclusions. The prosecution cut corners and their responsibilities, and Avery Becker was the result of their lack of procedures. So why is Avery Becker's innocence still being questioned when she has a clear alibi? When experts disagree over what exactly occurred the night of the death? When the prosecution failed to present any significant evidence? Is the jury going to sit here and allow an innocent person go to jail for a crime she did not commit? An accusation that has not been proven beyond reasonable doubt. A sentence that will change the course of her life forever. An accusation that is not fair because there is too much speculation. All they have are theories, and there's too much evidence that supports her innocence. This was her coach for 4 years. Small disagreements don't lead to something like this. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it comes down to this. The prosecution has not proven their case. Avery Becker is innocent.
Thank you, counsel. And any rebuttal closing argument from the people?
Yes, Your Honor. Age does not determine innocence. Defense mentioned several times the severity effect in that Becker's future would change. However, there is a reason that justice comes at such a high cost for the perpetrator. I would like to remind you that the defense's witnesses are biased, and the defendant confessed to lying to adults and improvising regularly. Avery acts on harmful impulses and uses the tools around her, be it Sharpies or knives. We know Becker's only alibi comes from her best friend, which is very far from reliability, and that Avery's phone was near Brackman's house on the day of his murder. Records of Becker's intent to burgle Brackman's house have also been found. This case is very clear-cut, and we have gathered plenty of evidence for a conviction. The defense is trying to convolute the case and distract from all the evidence gathered. Extremely. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, let me invite all of our team members to come back on, turn their cameras on so that we may see you. And let me congratulate all of you. Very well done. Thank you. I want to give our scoring panelists a moment to finish up their work, and scorers, just let me know when you're ready to proceed. And what we'll do is let them give you some brief feedback, and then we'll be able to move on and let y'all prepare for your next round.
Hi, Judge. This is Anna Angativa. I'm one of the scoring panelists. I wanted to know if someone can provide me with the team code for both of the teams. I didn't receive that information. I'm not sure if it was provided at the beginning or if I missed it somehow.
The prosecution is team code R, as in Ralph, and the defense is team code B, as in Bravo.
Okay, I apologize. I did have that. I was waiting for a number, but I have that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. While we're waiting on our scorers, let me ask if anyone has any general questions, and then we'll get to our comments from everyone.
I have a question about unfair extrapolation. I didn't realize that it goes to the jurors. Does that always happen?
Yes, that's the way it is. The rules have that. It's always been that procedure. And so, yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So when we've entered everything, do I just hit submit and I'm okay?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me, just by a show of hands, how many of you, is this your first time with mock trial? Wow. Terrific.
Oh, wow.
Most of you, and really, really nice job, particularly for your first time around. And especially in this environment, it's quite different than doing it in person. So I give you a lot of credit for working through all of this. I think it went really well. There were just a couple of times when the connections were poor, but otherwise I think I caught almost everything. So really nice work for everyone. All right. Scorers, just let me know when you're ready, and we'll have you start with some feedback that you want to give to all of our students. And I'll just ask you to keep it to just a minute or two each so that we can let them move on and prepare for the next round.
Hello, everyone. I see everyone's muted. I was so impressed with how all of you did. This is my first time participating in a mock trial. I did have a friend that was a coach in the past, so I had seen some practices, but this was my first time as an actual judge, and I was very, very impressed with all of you. I know this was very nerve-wracking, but I think everyone did an amazing job. Everyone made great objections and responding to any objections that were made, and just dealing with all the little things that come with a trial, and thinking on your feet and just making last minute decisions. I think everyone did a really, really great job.
Anna, would you tell the students a little bit about yourself? If you're a lawyer, how long you've been practicing, what area?
Sure. So I am a legal research attorney with the 18th Judicial District in Arapahoe County. I have been in practice for almost 2 years, and I haven't done trials since I graduated law school, but I did take trial practice and other trial-related courses through law school. So this was kind of a nice little refresher for me, especially since COVID started. When I was a law clerk, I didn't get to see any trials in person. It was all through WebEx. But seeing students doing it again, it was good to see again. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Stephanie, it looks like you're ready. Will you introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about you, and then what comments you have for them?
Sure. My name is Stephanie. I've been a paralegal for about 15 years, give or take. Have done both plaintiff and defense sides, so I enjoy both. When I did plaintiff work, we were nothing but trial attorneys that I worked for. So watching you guys is amazing, because it just reminds me of kind of being back, sitting behind an attorney, looking at everything and completely understanding what's going on. So I enjoyed the openings. I really like those, because I think once you kind of establish what the story is and what the case is about, it helps the juror understand, further through what they can anticipate. So I'm much more of I like the openings to see what's going on with it. But you guys all did amazing.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn to Krista with an introduction and your comments. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Your Honor. My name is Krista Mayer, and I work for the Colorado Attorney General's office. In my work there, I mostly appear in court in the appellate courts and do oral argument there. I also do administrative hearings, so that's about as close as I get to trial work. And let's see, I've been at the Attorney General's office for about 6.5 years, and before that, I was a defense attorney in private civil practice at a law firm. So I thought you guys were awesome. So I just echo what everyone else said. I think it's super impressive that you adapted to this Zoom situation and, carried forth with grace in kind of a different situation than what you might normally be used to. I wanted to just give you a couple of pieces of feedback or highlights. I thought that the openings and the closings were really good, especially when you used this, I think of it as a chapter by chapter organization, where you have topics and you go topic by topic, explaining what the evidence will show. I think that's really effective, and I think it's easy for the jury to follow, especially when you give them guideposts along the way saying, next, let's talk about such and such evidence. I was really impressed by how you used the witness statements to keep your witnesses in check. When you're doing a cross-examination, that's a really good tool to use to sort of train your opposing witness. So if you use that witness statement early on, if needed, you will teach the witness that if they stray from their witness statement, you will call them out on it. And from then forward, at least in my experience, when you're cross-examining a witness and you've shown them that you will hold them accountable to the witness statement they've already provided, then moving forward from there, they will be much more cooperative with you. So I think that's a really effective tool to use. And then I think I wanted to give a piece of feedback that with cross-examinations, I think you guys could, I heard a lot of great leading questions, but I think you guys could actually make more of your questions leading. So there were a few kind of open-ended questions, and you could make your cross-examinations even more effective by making sure that every question that you ask is a leading question and is basically a statement, you know, and sometimes it's the right thing to do to say correct or to say right, or would you agree that such and such and such and such? But sometimes you can just lay it out in little statements, in little bites, you know, and just make your statements. And once you train your witness or get your witness to cooperate with you, you'll have just a witness going, yes, yes, that's correct. And you get to make those statements of those facts, and the witness will follow along. So those are the highlights. I thought you guys did a fantastic job. You're all very professional. Your objections, I thought, were good. It was really fun to hear you guys kind of argue out the objections a little bit. So good job.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll just wrap up. My name is Ben Lutweiler. I am a district court judge here in the 18th Judicial District. I'm assigned in Arapahoe County, and I am the presiding criminal court judge. My background is, I was a trial lawyer for my entire career. I was a DA for about 15 years. I had my own firm for another 8 years and did criminal defense. And I also did civil plaintiffs work and domestic relations. So, but most of my time has been spent in the courtroom. And then, of course, now as a judge, watching attorneys try cases is a very different experience. And I've been doing that for about 6 years, I guess. And y'all are right up there with these attorneys. You have a really good working knowledge of the rules of evidence. And I will tell you, that's probably one of the biggest failings that I see of attorneys who are actually practicing trial work is when they perhaps get lazy about knowing and understanding the rules of evidence. And there's, of course, a lot that goes into being a good trial lawyer, but right up near the top is knowing the evidence rules, because that's what you need to use to get your evidence into court. So I think everyone handled objections really well, both making and responding to objections. I overruled every objection, and that's mostly by design. I've been involved with mock trial for about 7 years now, and my fallback is to overrule objections so that I can get the information in. I will sustain them occasionally, but mostly I want y'all to have the opportunity to get the evidence in. What's important, not really is the evidence. What's important is the objection and how you respond to it, how you handle interruptions, and can you get back to your examination of your witness. Everyone did that very well. If I can give a few pointers across the board, generally for everything that you do, the more you can set aside a script or notes, the better you will be. If you have the opportunity to watch attorneys in practice, you'll see a tremendous difference between those who will read their opening statement or closing argument and those who who have it committed to memory. Even if it's not word for word, and often I think it's better if it's not word for word. You can make an outline, and that's what I would suggest is I think everybody here knows this problem. You know what the witnesses have had to say, say in the past, and you know what you want to tell the jury. So it's, I think, far better to make some notes, sketch out an outline or a few 3x5 cards, something that can bring you back to where you want to be if you've lost your way. But I think everybody knows it well enough, but some of you may have had a script, and when you have that, you rely on it. So I would make that suggestion to you to get rid of those because none of you need it. You've got this. Everyone was really comfortable, and that can be a hard thing to develop, is being comfortable speaking in public, certainly. But here in this situation, the spotlight's entirely on you when you're doing your examination or when you're the witness. And everyone was really comfortable with that. So I really applaud your poise, your dedication, and all the work that you've put into this. It was a remarkable effort by every one of you, and I'm really grateful that you're doing it in this program. I've come to love the mock trial tournaments, and I'm really glad that y'all are keeping it going strong, particularly this year. I am happy to throw it open to any of y'all to ask our scoring panelists or me any questions, but I don't want to keep you because I know you'd all like to have some time to breathe and prep for your next round. Any questions from anyone? All right. Well, congratulations to you all and good luck.
And Your Honor, before anybody logs off, I've just been asked to tell you all that your teacher, your coach will be notified what courtroom you're going to go to for the next round. So make sure to check in with them.
Thank you.